Hi, everybody. Today we're going to talk about um, the branding and identity sketches for the business I started many years ago. Um, I built my branding around the business card. I started off with that first because at the time in the late 90s, business card were still predominantly how we communicated with folks or passed information back and forth for folks. Um, So this is a copy. Um, it would be cut out and be cut to business card size. I just made a copy of it because I think this is the only original copy I have, so I didn't want to have that physically walking around anymore. But I would hand all my business cards, such as this, to somebody when I meet them or was introduced to them. And then the flip side would have a more finished version of the card and with my contact information and such. The back side, and if you look at my portfolio, it kind of matches my portfolio aspect. Is that the first impression is that it's a little rough. It's this is a rubber stamp. It's a basically just taking a piece of rubber stamp and then stamping it on there with some ink. So everything was a little crooked all the time and not perfect. But ultimately, I wanted to represent my name and also give the person an idea of how to pronounce my name because the H in my name is actually is silent. So I kind of outlined the H in order to emulate that. And then when you flip it over, we used to have this thing called a Rolodex, and it was this big machine that kind of just sat on your desk and kind of spun like a Ferris wheel, and then the cards would come up. Um, the idea was to put this in the Rolodex, and then so every time you flip it up, the numbers will always be at the top. So it's kind of the most important thing, and also the most important way I want people to contact me. Of course, at the time, we had a mailbox, and the mailbox would basically use for um, sending letters, invoices, contracts, and such. I decided to play with my emphasis here. There wasn't anybody with the same last name, nor was it a photographer with the same name as mine. So I decided I just want to be Min from that for that period of time. And then it has a black bar over here that indicates what my discipline was at the time was photography. I'm going to introduce you to some of the sketches. Again, this is a copy from my sketchbook. It was basically October 1996 when I started this kind of branding idea project for myself. On this page over here, there's a couple of various layouts from vertical. I played with that a little bit. You can see I always put the black box with the photography through it right there. I played with lines a little bit. Other marks and bars in here. I try to use my enlarge, and basically, I was exercising all the elements of how I want to represent myself on a business card. Um, Fast forward to 1997, about 5 months later, 4 or 5 months later, into February. So that's 2, 3, about 5 months later. Um, I finally made some more progress, and I decided, like, at this point, I was looking at, just dropping the H from my name in order to help people learn how to pronounce my name. I was already, actually, before I even moved out of Texas, I was already thinking about New York City because that's a 212 area code, which is interesting. But the idea is that I was thinking about square cards. It was an unusual dimension for a card, and just kind of playing with it a little bit. You can see I'm already working on the highlights or the outline of the letter. Perhaps I didn't come across that till later. Um, Later on in that same month, I started playing around again, and I think I was kind of doodling there for a little bit. I was trying to play with it to see what it would look like on a postcard, because ultimately, the business card expands into letterheads and envelopes and postcards and all these other promotional materials I would send out. Um, at the time, I was already thinking about prospective clients. I found the information for somebody in Seattle at the time. That was a while back. Fast forward about another month later, it looks like 397, yeah, 325. So about a month after the last page, and I started becoming a little bit more finalized with my name here, and I actually did put on the bottom in parentheses silent, but apparently I found that a little redundant. I kind of played around with different versions of the black box of photography, where would it go. Again, playing with that large M, which I did a few months back, and then kind of like playing with the elements a little bit, and then ultimately around looks like about May, late May, I came up with the final idea for the card and the finalization of the card. I kept that box, put the number up there, uh, put the address, and it comes out like this. And so basically from October into May, that was about 8 months. It took me about 8 months to kind of work through the process of doing various sketches and layouts for this business card. And I only showed you a handful of pages from that, but there are definitely several pages in between. I kind of showed you the highlights. But the idea is when you're working with your branding material, you want to be sure the consistency from one to the next is always going to be consistent between letterhead, envelope, um, labels, anything else that has your name on it. So branding again is that idea of like making sure all your materials has your name and contact information on it, so that way they can always find it. And this is very much part of advertising is ensuring that your brand is on all your documents. If you have any questions, feel free to email me.